Good evening, everybody. It is Monday, June 19th, 2023. It is the latest installment of Sports Talk Live with your host, myself, Nick Burt. First of all, want to wish everybody a happy 7th anniversary of the Cavs title. Big day for Cleveland. I remember that day 7 years ago. It was a huge day for the city, winning their first title in 56 years, 52 years, something like that. Just talking with my friends and family from Cleveland, that was a huge night. That was a huge night for the city. LeBron bringing back title to Cleveland, huge night. And it's something I'll probably never forget, but that was 7 years ago, and we are now 7 years later, and Cleveland haven't won a title since. They came close in the World Series, but alas, they did not win. They lost to the Cubs. So we got some stuff to talk about tonight. I mean, it's kind of a shorter show because we're just getting into the part of the year where there really isn't much going on. So we got some news from both the NBA, the NHL, maybe some NFL talk. There's always stuff going on there. We can talk about the Nations Leagues that ended this weekend. And then, of course, your CFL Week 2 recap. So let's just get started. NBA news and notes. The biggest news coming out this weekend is the Suns making the trades with the Wizards to send Bradley Beal to Phoenix, and to send Chris Paul, Landry Shamet, and basically a ton of second-round draft picks to Washington. So this was... I was kind of stunned by this news. I didn't really see this. I saw the Suns as a destination for Bradley Beal. I didn't see it being possible, though, because I didn't think that the Suns would have the compensation to get this deal done. And it ends up that they do. And I don't know, because the Suns now aren't going to have a ton of cap room. They have like 6 or 7 players. They don't have a bench right now. And I don't know if they'll be able to get a, halfway decent bench that's going to help you in the playoffs. And I just, the trade makes sense, but it doesn't, I would say. It seems like this is setting up to be a Brooklyn Nets 2020 to 22 situation where they're trying to put this super team together and it's just not going to work out. And really, it probably won't. The only super team that's really worked, in all honesty, is LeBron in Miami. And even then, that one didn't work as successfully as people wanted. They only won 2 titles out of the 4 years he was there. Yes, that's 50%. But still, I don't know. It's an interesting trade. Like I said, you've got to have money for bench depth, because bench depth is huge in this league. And I don't know if the Suns are going to be able to get a good enough bench for what they have left, basically. So it's interesting what Matt Ishbia is doing in his first, few months in charge here in Phoenix. And it's going to be interesting to see where this is going, because it seems like it's just putting all the chips on the table right now. We need to win a title now type situation, and we'll deal with the ramifications later. Kind of an LA Rams situation, but it's not. I wouldn't say it's as much of a Rams situation than this is, but I don't know. I don't really love the trade, but I'm sure Washington, I don't know if they got enough back, because like I said, it's going to be Chris Paul, who's apparently going to be, once this is done, he's going to be retraded and go to LA with the Clippers. Landry Shamet, it's okay. And then, like I said, it's other compensation right now, but from what it's been said, it's a bunch of second round picks. So it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. The Suns are still going to be a contender in the West next year. This Nuggets team, if it stays the way it was this year, I don't see anybody beating them again. The Nuggets just looked that good this year. I think Nikola Jokic is going to have another outstanding performance next year, an MVP type season. And I think Jamal Murray might be up there too, having a MVP type season. I don't see anybody getting past this Nuggets team in the West for at least another year. The Suns are going to try, but the Suns really controlled that series the Nuggets controlled the series against the Suns from basically start to finish. So I don't know if adding Bradley Beal is going to change that. I guess we'll see what happens, but we're still a long ways away. Draft is this week. It is on Thursday night, so that should be an interesting watch. And, I don't even know if the Suns are going to have draft picks to add to that bench because I think they've traded them all away. So, a lot of things going on there. The other news in the NBA is Draymond Green declined his player option. He will be a free agent going into the offseason. So that is going to be something rather large to watch because from what it's like all this year, it sounded like it was going to be coming to an end for Draymond there. Now, Mike Dunleavy Jr., the new GM of the Warriors, said, we want him back next year. I don't know. With the whole thing that happened with Jordan Poole in the preseason and training camp and the fight that led to suspensions, I don't know. I don't know if he's going back to Golden State. I don't know where else he would go, though, because I think he's going to demand one more big contract like the one he just opted out of. And a lot of people are saying, well, the Pistons need somebody like him. He's somewhat hometown. He's from the Flint area. And, he should go to Detroit. I don't know if Detroit wants that. That's the thing. I guess we'll see what happens with that. Free agency is still, I think it's a week and a half away, if I'm not mistaken. So things could happen quickly here. I wouldn't be surprised by anything, to be honest. So it's all a waiting game right now. We got to get through the draft, and then you start to get that free agency, news time going, and then we'll get a better idea of where things lay for next year. So that's about it in the NBA. We'll move on to the ice, the now melted ice, as it is the off season. But few NHL news and notes here. Travis Green, the former Canucks head coach, I believe he was there until 2021. He is now joining the New Jersey Devils staff. He will be an assistant there, replacing Andrew Burnett. He apparently had some options for an assistant job with the Flames, the Maple Leafs, but he chose the Devils. So I think that's a good hire by the Devils. Getting somebody with experience behind the bench to be an assistant. I thought it would be a good hire for the Leafs, but you always have that lingering voice on this behind your head that because Travis Green was hired by the Leafs, Sheldon Keefe is on a very short leash and just could be replaced by Green at any moment, basically. I didn't really see that. It seems like the Leafs are committed to Sheldon Keefe. It sounds like they want to get an extension done. And I think he would be a good hire. I think Sheldon Keefe will be there for the long term. I think he showed a lot this postseason, finally getting over that hump of winning in the first round and then getting to the second round. Obviously, things happened in the second round, but I think he's set for Toronto for the interim, I will say, because if they don't have a contract done by the start of the season, then yes, he's on a very short leash. But from what it sounds like, they want to get it done. So won't be surprised by that if it happens sometime between now and free agency starting in 11 days, I think, officially. So we'll see. But like I said, I think the Travis Green hire for New Jersey is really good, replacing Burnett, who left for the Predators job. So I think it's going to end up good for both sides, both for Green and for the Devils. This gets Green back in the league, as an assistant, but gives him time with less pressure. He had a lot of pressure in Vancouver because Vancouver's one of the hardest cities to work in. And he took a few years off. He's now back in the league, and I wouldn't be surprised if he gets another head coaching job sometime soon. So I think it's a very good hire. Other news going around, obviously the Vancouver Canucks bought out Oliver Ekman-Larsson's contract over the weekend. It seems like, there's some names that are starting to pop up now for Ekman-Larsson that might take him in free agency. It's sounding like maybe the Bruins, maybe the Lightning. Both those teams, he would have to take a greatly reduced contract. But if you take a reduced contract for a year or two and you keep pushing that cup window open, it might be worth it. It depends on how much you value winning a cup, I think. We'll see. I think he just had a bad few years in Vancouver. I don't think he's an absolutely awful player right now. Awful to be worth a buyout, basically. It was the bubble year, so 2020. It was teams like the Boston Bruins that were lining up to trade for him from Arizona, and they were throwing out multiple first rounders, I think. It ended up being Vancouver that got him. I don't know if it was that summer or the summer after, but it was sometime in that time frame that Vancouver got him for a decent amount. I know the Louis Eriksson contract was in there. I think there was at least one first round pick. There might have been two. And I think it's just because Vancouver is such a mess right now. It really derailed Ekman-Larsson's career, I guess. I think wherever he lands, he'll probably be better than he was in Vancouver. And this, almost $20 million cap space cap hit buyout that the Canucks have. It might come back to haunt them, but in the end, it was because he wasn't performing in Vancouver. And who's to say if he performs in somewhere like Boston that he would have done the same in Vancouver that year. So we'll see what happens with that. Looks like Connor Brown, who is going to be a free agent come July 1st. It sounds like he's getting, some traction, like the Edmonton Oilers potentially signing him. He tore his ACL 4 games into the year this year, so he didn't really get much play time. Coming off an injury, I don't know. ACL injuries are always very difficult to work around, basically. You don't know what kind of player you're going to get back from the injury. Like we saw Jamal Murray, he came back and played better than ever. But there's some players that just don't end up being that. Also, a name that's being mentioned with the Oilers, Jonathan Toews, if potentially he comes back. We're still not sure if he's retiring yet or if he's, he's not staying in Chicago. We know that. But it's basically just, is he going to keep playing or is he going to retire? I think he probably will end up retiring. I don't see anything else happening with that. The Blue Jackets potentially getting calls on the 3rd overall pick. I feel like it would have to take a lot. And by a lot, you got to take a lot and raise it even more for the Blue Jackets to even consider moving out of this spot. It's going to have to include probably multiple first-round picks and probably a decent talent right now for them to move out of 3. Maybe you get somebody that isn't a prospect but is young enough to help the franchise long-term. Obviously, that's what they're hoping to get with the 3rd overall pick. They want a franchise player. They already acquired Damon Severson and Ivan Provorov in the offseason, to bolster the defensive line. We'll see. I don't think they're going to move out of 3. I think they'd be crazy to move out of 3. And if they do, like I said, they're crazy. It would have to take a massive package from a team that's desperate enough, and I don't know if there's one of those teams out there. Given that, I guess NFL news really quick. Just sounds like Stephon Diggs kind of having problems within the Buffalo Bills organization right now because he wants to get paid, which it's seeming to become commonplace for players to sit out to get paid. Now, I mean, he's still somewhat practicing. He's somewhat practicing, somewhat not. But it's just, it sounds like there's a lot of issues within the organization right now, and it stems from him wanting to get paid. So, I don't know if he'll end up getting paid this offseason. I don't think he gets traded. I think we're too late in the process for him to get traded. And, again, an extension could come theoretically at any time. I don't think it's going to come, but who knows? Maybe the Bills do want to keep Allen and Diggs together. I don't know. There probably are at least 6 or 7 wide receivers that are better than Stephon Diggs right now. I don't think Stephon Diggs should be the highest paid wide receiver in football. It's the wide receiver position's probably, I'd say, the 3rd most replaceable position in football behind the kicker and the running back. Because you got talent coming out of college every single year that just put out great plays, I would say. And given that, I think he's replaceable. So, I don't see him getting extended this offseason. It's the NFL. The Bills might decide it's time to overpay and pay him. But I don't think it would be the smart business decision to extend him. So, going into that, we'll do the CFL Week 2 review. So, obviously, the 4 games this weekend. On Thursday night, the Calgary Stampeders defeated the Ottawa Red Blacks 26-15. No, not a stunning result, like I kind of said last week. The Red Blacks are just not good right now. They're right down there with the Edmonton Elks, who we'll get to in a second, and they're just going to struggle all year. I think Calgary's just, they're clearly the better team. And they kind of proved it. Yeah, yes, it was somewhat low scoring, but they still came out with the win. It was on the road. So, I mean, getting out of Ottawa with a win, I think, is good enough for Calgary to say that was good week. Probably wanted to put up more points. Jake Mayer's still kind of getting set into this offense. So it's still going to be a process for the Stampeders to get up there talent-wise. So Friday night game, the Winnipeg Blue Bombers defeated the Saskatchewan Roughriders 45-27. This is the second game in a row that the Blue Bombers have scored 40-plus points. They look unstoppable this year. I said that from day one, basically. They look like the team they have the past 3 years. They just seem to keep getting better, too. They figured out something. Mike O'Shea and Zach Collaros, the head coach and QB, they figured out this secret sauce, I'd say, and they are just so successful now that you just don't see an end in sight for them. So, but on the other side, the Rough Riders, I think they put up a good performance. Even though they lost, and yes, it looks like a blowout, they put up a better performance than I expected them to. There were some really good plays. They stayed in the game for a lot of it. They'd always get it to a one-possession game. I mean, they led this in the first half for at least a quarter, I think. They'd always get close. The defense couldn't get a stop, and Winnipeg would go down and score, make it a two-possession game. Then they'd respond right back, make it a one-possession game, not get a stop. And it was just a continuous, spiral, basically. But I liked what I saw from the Rough Riders on Friday night. Like I said, it's obviously a loss. They're 1-1 now, but it could have been much worse. So I'm happy with the way it played out. Saturday night, the Edmonton Elks got a donut. They lost to the BC Lions 22-0 at BC Place. The Lions, like I said, they look like the second best team in the league. It's just a shame that they're in the same division as the Blue Bombers, because that would be probably a great Grey Cup if both of them faced up. But obviously that's most likely not going to be possible unless BC completely fall off and get the crossover and they end up playing in the East Division playoff, which I don't think will happen. But the Elks still, they're far away from competing right now. It's slowly increments getting there. But this performance wasn't good, to say the least. So, given that the final game, the Argonauts raised their 2022 Grey Cup banner against the Hamilton Tiger Cats. The Argonauts come out victorious 32-14. And the big story coming out of this game, Chad Kelly, the quarterback for the Argonauts, played that fourth quarter of the Grey Cup. He looks just like he fits in this league so much. There are probably, I'd say, two quarterbacks that are better than him right now. And, he's only played one game. And it's Zach Collaros and Vernon Adams Jr. He is number 3. I can easily see him going up to 2 if one of those two stutter, basically. He looks very good. He looks very comfortable. A lot of people questioned when he signed with the Argonauts, is this even going to work out? Is he even going to get playing time, basically? Now he's the starter. And I liked what I saw from the Argonauts. I don't think they're going to repeat. They might make it back to the Grey Cup because the East is bad, but they I don't think they repeat. It's still the Blue Bombers' Grey Cup to lose. So given that's the recap for this week. Also, just did want to mention with the Tiger Cats, it's starting to look like Orlando Steinauer. It might be time to go. Obviously the fall off in the second half of last year, and now not an outstanding start this year. That seat's going to start to get a little bit warmer, I think, for him. I don't think anything's going to happen this soon. But, again, I don't think anything's going to happen this soon. But we'll see. So that is officially it for the CFL this week. We'll have the power rankings come out on Wednesday. And then, we'll do it all over again. So quick kick around the pitch time. The news coming out today, Mexico sacked Diego Cocoa. 8 games into his tenure. He was hired 6-7 months ago, I think. He has now been relieved of his duties as the Mexican national manager. 8 games. He only lost one of them, and that was the 3-0 loss to the United States in the Nations League semifinal. The Mexican Federation is in complete disarray right now, and I think Cocoa just got thrown in at the wrong time. I think he could end up being a good manager if things were stable in Mexico right now. They aren't. And I think it was set up for failure from the beginning. This squad is old and aging. They don't have the young talent that like the U.S. has right now. They're falling behind in CONCACAF. And I think Mexico didn't expect it to be this quick of a drop-off. And it has been. They did end up winning the third place game, so he won his last game in charge, but he's now out of a job. The search starts. I don't even know where you start for Mexico. I don't know who's going to want to come into that position, basically. I don't think there's going to be a lot of managers that want to go into that turmoil type situation. So it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out. But given that, we did have the Nations League final last night. The United States defeats Canada 2-0. Richards and Balogun scored their first goals for the U.S. Gio Reyna had 2 assists, so he had the assist on both goals. A dominating performance start to finish from the U.S. Canada did not look like they knew what they were doing, which kind of was shocking. John Herdman usually gets that Canadian team, ready to play the Americans and usually shuts them down pretty well. And they just didn't do that last night. Alphonso Davies was nowhere to be found. Joe Scally really locked him down, which, Joe Scally stepping in off the bench for, there were he stepped in for Dest, who got the red card on Thursday. A great performance. A lot of that team had great performances last night. BJ Callahan, great performance as manager, only his second game as a manager. So we'll see. This was obviously the USA A squad, basically. It wasn't preordained that they were going to win the Nations League, but they were the heavy favorite. We now go into the Gold Cup that starts this weekend. The U.S. is bringing a B squad. Everybody else is bringing an A-ish squad. We'll go A-, basically. Like Canada isn't bringing some of their stars. They're bringing in some of their fringe players. I don't even know who's Mexico's bringing in, but they're bringing in an interim manager. Jamaica's bringing in a very heavy A squad, so they might be a team to watch out for in this Gold Cup. And we'll see what BJ Callahan can do with this heavy MLS squad in the Gold Cup. theoretically, there shouldn't really be any challenge until the semifinal. And what if he wins this and he wins all, let's see, it would be 6 games, I think, to win the cup. If he wins all 6 games and then he won these 2 Nations League games, I think there really needs to be a discussion on why Greg Berhalter's being back. Because, they're saying Berhalter's being brought back because he won us things. He won us the Nations League. He won us the Gold Cup. Well, if BJ Callahan wins these 5 or 6 games, however many it is, guess what? He and Berhalter have the exact same trophies and the exact same amount of them. And guess what? BJ Callahan has been a manager for going into this Gold Cup. He's been a manager for 2 games. He's an MLS goalkeeping coach. If he wins this, the discussion needs to be had about Berhalter. It's not going to happen because U.S. Soccer doesn't care. But why are we bringing him back when this interim of an interim just won us the same trophies that Berhalter did? Just my thoughts on it. We'll do a preview of the Gold Cup on Friday. Back to just talking, we'll go over to Europe. Spain wins their Nations League over Croatia 5-4 in penalties. That game was destined for penalties after the first kick of the ball. Croatia was just playing very defensively. It seemed like Croatia would win that game if it made it to penalties. They don't. Obviously, big win for Spain. Obviously, the Nations League isn't the biggest tournament. It's not the World Cup. It's not the Euro. It's the Carabao Cup of tournaments. But a trophy is a trophy, basically. So it seems like it's the end of that golden generation for Croatia, which really sucks that they didn't win a trophy. They've gotten close, obviously, but they didn't win that trophy. But, I mean, they've gotten farther than any other Croatian team has. So I think that should be, a thing to be looked back on with this team. They didn't get over that final hump. They had the 2 chances in finals because they had this final. They had the World Cup final in 2018. But this game was played, I think, completely different to the way they played in 2018. They fell behind in 2018. They didn't know what to do. Yesterday, they knew what they were doing. They were playing for penalties because it was believed that was their strength. And it just didn't work out. Penalties are always a coin flip. And they just lost the coin flip, basically. And then finally, we did have some Euro qualifiers today. No real results to call home about. England did end up beating North Macedonia 7-0. It's North Macedonia. It wasn't expected to be that big of a blowout, but it ended up being that. I thought they would lay off in the second half like they did against Malta, and they did not. Bukayo Saka had a hat trick. Harry Kane got a brace. I think Calvin Phillips had his first goal in an England shirt. I don't remember who the 2 other goal scorers were. Actually, it would have only been 1. Again, no other real results to call home about, I don't believe. I know Kazakhstan scored a 88th minute goal to beat Northern Ireland. I know Finland defeated San Marino 6-0. San Marino still looking for their first win since 2004. It's not coming now. Greece lose to France 1-0 on... it was Marcus Rashford that scored the other goal for England. France beat Greece 1-0 on a Kylian Mbappe penalty in the 55th minute. That was retaken after he missed the first one because the goalkeeper was off the line, which it was close, but he was off the line technically. That game also had like 13 minutes of stoppages in the second half, or 13 or 14. Just looking at the other results here, like I said, nothing really outstanding here. So nobody's clinched a spot yet. We got to get to the September window for that to start becoming a possibility. But a lot of teams put themselves in good positions, like England. They haven't lost a game yet in the Euro qualifiers, so they're in a really good position they're close to being qualified. So given that, like I said, it was going to be a short episode today no matter what, because there's just not a ton going on. So that is it for today. We'll be back on Wednesday. Probably another short episode. I'm sure some news will break that can be talked about, but other than that, that's going to be it for today. So thank you for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed tonight's edition. Like I said, we'll be back on Wednesday, and hopefully you'll be back also. So have a good night, and we will see you Wednesday.